I am thrilled to be sitting with the creators and cast of a sensational new Gershwin musical, An American in Paris. It has been called everything from a masterpiece to a dazzling achievement. And the Wall Street Journal has said of the show's director-choreographer, Christopher Wheeldon, that the musical instantly catapults him into the ranks of top-tier director-choreographers, by which they mean Jerome Robbins and Bob Fosse. An American in Paris is inspired by the Academy Award-winning film and features music and lyrics by George and Ira Gershwin and a book by Tony nominee and Pulitzer Prize finalist Craig Lucas. It tells the romantic story of a young American soldier, a beautiful French girl, and an indomitable European city, each yearning for a new beginning in the aftermath of the war. So please welcome, from An American in Paris, director-choreographer Christopher Wheeldon. Book writer Craig Lucas. Cast members Leanne Cope, Max von Essen, Veanne Cox, and Brandon Uranowitz, and producer Stuart Oken. The company of An American in Paris. Welcome.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Hi there. How's everybody?
Great.
Thank you so much for doing this today at the company of American in Paris. You know, there are not enough superlatives to mention what this show means to me and to so many people in New York. An American in Paris is absolutely stunning in every way. It brings back to Broadway something that has been missing for a very long time, which is beauty, glamour, and good old-fashioned romance through the perfect melding of dance and musical theater at its finest. This production is pure eye candy for the heart and soul. So for each of you, what has it been like working on An American in Paris? Chris, I'll start with you.
I don't remember the days before working on American in Paris. No, it's been just the most phenomenal, exciting, creative process from the beginning, from 2 years ago when we sat down for our first reading. And all of this has been very, very new for me. So I feel like at each step it's been a big learning curve. But yeah, I got to go on this amazing journey with all these fantastic people.
Yeah, Craig, for you.
This was the first time that I was the oldest person. And I didn't enjoy it all that much. I kept turning around looking for the older person that I could ask, and they weren't there. So I'm still getting over the shock.
That's what it comes down to for you?
Yes.
Leanne, for you.
The whole experience has been, like you say, you can't put into words what the show was to you when you came to see it, but for me, I can't put into words what an experience this has been. The last 18 months since my first audition, kind of audition in a shower room at the Opera House in London, to now performing on Broadway is pretty incredible. And just to feel part of a family, in a ballet company, you go to school with these people and you end up in a company with them and then you dance with them for 10 years. And I didn't think I'd ever be able to feel that again with another bunch of people. But for the last year, we've become so close, and especially with Paris, all traveling to Paris together, brought us really close. So I'm just happy that I'm part of another family.
Beautiful. Max, for you.
I've also booked a lot of jobs in shower rooms. No, I'm kidding. No, it was really wonderful, your introduction, because we always believed everything you said. And I've been doing this for a while, and I've had some less than successful shows. So I always reminded myself from day one, when I auditioned for Henri, I could see him on paper, and I thought, this will be the best role I've ever had the honor of playing. And I just had to keep reminding myself that this show was going to be beautiful, that this show was going to be unique out of anything that's currently on Broadway. And I just had to keep saying that. So obviously it's amazing, the response, but it could have these days you just don't know. I've seen so many incredible things. Years ago I saw Scottsboro Boys and I thought it was the most incredible thing that season. It sort of came and went. It's not fair. Happens all the time. But I just said, I know that this is a role of a lifetime. I know that I'm going to be in something so special, so unique, so don't ever forget that. And other people, I think that too. So that's real. Now, like, the gifts are coming. Now it's paying off and we're having all this wonderful stuff come to us. But we always really believed in it, and that's been an incredible, incredible journey for us.
Veanne, for you.
Yes, hi. I was a ballerina first, so for me, I feel like my life has come full circle. Not that I'm up on point.
Yet.
But
Tony number coming. It's coming.
Right.
Sequel.
Fouette's on point.
I will forge the way for older women to get back up on point. But for me, it was a decision for me to take on a role in a musical. I didn't have a song. I dance a little bit, but I wanted to support the life that I had when I was young and the life that I believe in, because in my dreams I'm a ballerina, and so I feel like it's been a really wonderful journey for me just to participate in Chris and Craig's genius in creating this beautiful piece. And for me, being the oldest woman in the cast, how did that happen? It's a lovely place to be, because you get to participate in a wiser, more challenging, but rewarding way. And so for me, that journey has been really wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This show is sort of represents and is sort of the culmination of the reason why I got into this whole thing, this crazy business called show in the first place. It's just kind of like this big, delicious, beautiful cake that keeps getting layers added to it, and like icing added, and like letters and a cherry. It just keeps getting better. And even down to the fact that I'm sitting next to Veanne Cox, who is the kind of the reason I got into acting in the first place, when I saw her in Company and so it's, and once I really started getting into the business and realizing how this whole thing works, I've always wanted to be part of something new and be involved in a project that starts at the ground and we build our way up, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. So it really is the epitome of a dream come true. It's why I wanted to do this, and I just can't believe we're here right now. It's still shocking to me, but I'm so grateful.
Stuart, for you.
Well, as the producer, it's a slightly different journey for me. I'm in my 60s, so I joined the senior group here. I guess me and Craig hold that down. Veanne's quite a bit younger still. But I fell in love with the musical theater when I saw My Fair Lady on tour in 1958. And the glory of those years of musicals got inside of me, and I was addicted to Lerner and Loewe and Rodgers and Hammerstein and gradually Stephen Sondheim. And I watched those years kind of give way to a kind of emptiness in the 80s and early 90s. And my life took me from the Chicago theater to Hollywood, where I worked in film for 10 years. And then Disney asked me to rejoin the theater again in 1994, when the division that Beauty and the Beast begot the division, and I joined right after Beauty. I say that as a way of saying that for about 40 years I've been starting new projects, and you start them all with aspiration and hope, and you believe that there's something really special that you're going for, and only rarely do all the pieces actually tip in the right way, with the right people, in the right timing, with the right material. And this has been the experience of my lifetime. This is, there's no question for me. I've had some other nice things happen, but to feel like I've brought this group of artists, helped bring this group of artists to Broadway, and we created an environment when we started that we intended to be free and safe, and I knew on some level that we would go as far as Chris would take us, and therefore supporting anything that made that work was the right choice, and it has all worked out really nicely.
It's absolutely brilliant. For those of you who've seen the show, you already know. For those of you who don't, run to the Palace Theater. There's nothing like this show. It's just absolutely brilliant. Christopher, how did you get involved? Because I understand it took you a few times to say yes to directing and choreographing this, right?
Yeah, my Twitter account has been alive with hashtag pinch me, hashtag I've got beginner's luck, hashtag I can't believe this. Because really, if you'd said to me 4 or 5 years ago, you'll have a hit show on Broadway one day as director and choreographer, I would have laughed. I mean, really, it's unbelievable. Stuart saw one of my ballets, Alice in Wonderland, up in Canada. I think, did you see it in Canada, Stuart? I did. Yeah. And he gave me a call, and we had a very nice lunch, and he suggested that I might like to consider directing and choreographing the show. And actually, I was really, obviously, honored that he had that sort of confidence in me, but I didn't quite have that confidence in myself. So it took about 8 months for Stuart, who was very persistent.
Do you mind if I interrupt you? Because that was not the story exactly. Is it all right if I said it straight?
Okay, go ahead.
I asked you long before Alice, and that's when you told me that you were not prepared to take this on. It was after Alice when you actually said to me, okay, maybe I'm ready. I don't mean to change it, but it was...
Details are important.
You were right. In other words, you didn't know until after Alice that you felt the confidence, but that's when you knew that you had a shot at this. That's when you said maybe, more or less.
That story. So really, it was we agreed. I think we agreed between us that we'd take it sort of at each level, and we'd sort of make a decision. We'd do a reading, see how that went. I spent the whole 29 hours pretty much sweating from ear to toe, but it seemed like we got through it, and I had Craig's support and guidance from the beginning. He's had a lot of experience directing, of course, and working with directors, so he was really by my side for this whole experience. Couldn't have done it without him. So,
and your love for Gershwin music began at a very early age. I love this. I see another collaboration going to happen soon, right? I mean, another show. Talk about Gershwin music early on, at a very early age.
Well, actually, my parents took me to a concert when I was 8 years old, and I threatened to sleep. It was my first classical music concert, and my mother tells this story. I don't remember it. Obviously, Stuart might remember it. I'm not sure. Sorry, Stuart. Sorry.
Okay, all right, you're sorry.
And she tells this story that I threatened to sleep, and it was a concert of Gershwin piano music and songs, and I was absolutely on the edge of my seat from beginning to end. So my love for Gershwin sort of started there, and then I danced in George Balanchine's Who Cares at the New York City Ballet. It was my favorite ballet to dance, and I got one of the few reviews I ever got for my dancing for Who Cares, and I was just one of the 5 boys in the Corps de Ballet, and I can't remember what it said, something like Christopher Wheeldon smiling from ear to ear, and I think that pretty much described how I felt about dancing in Who Cares. And then I made a version of An American in Paris, just the complete orchestral piece for the New York City Ballet about 12 years ago, which wasn't very good actually. But ran for a couple of seasons, and so when this came up, it's certainly the opportunity to choreograph it was very appealing.
Wonderful. Craig, how did you get involved, and what attracted you to the project?
Stuart and his partner Van Kaplan asked me to look at the movie and then have a conversation with them, and they did something no one ever does. They came to my home upstate in the suburbs, and I was so completely impressed that someone did that. And really, the reason that I agreed was that I wanted to work with Chris, and that Stuart and Veanne were very clear they did not want to make some kind of capitalization of the movie. My teachers said that you only adapt something for the musical stage if you can make a contribution to it and make it better. So you don't touch The Wizard of Oz because you can't make it better. You know, they did touch Romeo and Juliet, and in a sense, they made it different and great. But normally, you want to make something new. And it seemed that really these were the first two commercial producers I ever met, who were serious about making a Broadway musical built around dance, who wanted to take seriously the idea that you could really delve into character and story by trusting the audience to be smart enough to care about real people. And I never meet these people. I meet the other people. So I was wildly impressed, and they proved to be good for their word.
Yeah. Christopher and Craig, would you talk about your collaboration on structuring the musical and the story, and whose idea was it to move it after World War II?
Was that my idea?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I don't remember that. But we sat around a table with Rob Fisher, who was the closest contact to the Gershwin heirs and had known Ira. And we really listened to a billion songs and talked about what would it mean if we took the circumstances of the film seriously. And it was a collective activity. I only became interested in the things that Chris was interested in, and my curiosity guided the conversation. And it was a long and complicated and deep process. And I was a pain in the ass for a long time, and now everyone is speaking to me again.
And talk about working with Rob Fisher, the three of you together with structuring the musical.
Yeah, so we spent some fantastic afternoons sitting in Rob's dining room on the Upper West Side, and we had the complete lyrics of Ira Gershwin, which it's a book it's like this big, and sort of really actually finding ways to make Craig's story really feel like it was growing out of the music of George Gershwin, the songs of George and Ira Gershwin, and really listening also. I mean, the thing that was exciting to me was the opportunity to use quite a lot of the orchestral music as well. The piano concerto we listened to and got very excited about the second Rhapsody for piano and orchestra. Of course, everyone knows Rhapsody in Blue, but very few people actually know the second Rhapsody. It's not so often played. And like the Rhapsody in Blue, it feels like a piece of music that's been written specifically to tell a story, even though nobody really knows what that story is. Yeah. So we invented our own story to that piece. So that was really some of the most exciting creative moments of this whole process.
Putting it all together.
Putting it all together, yeah.
Yeah. And the cast. How did you each get cast in the show? I mean, Leanne, you're making a dazzling Broadway debut as Lise. You come from the world of the Royal Ballet. Did you ever think you'd be starring on Broadway?
No. No, it never. I mean, I've loved musicals for as long as I've loved ballet, and I thought it might be something I'd like to try once I'd retired from, hung up my point shoes, and maybe I'd join an amateur dramatic society in Wimbledon or something just along the road from where I live. I don't know. But and then this opportunity came up, and it just kind of fit. Like, if a dance is ever going to make a ballet, specifically a ballet dance, is ever going to make a transition, I think this is the perfect role for that. And it's been a long. I mean, the audition process was long, and because I was in London and a lot of stuff was happening here, I didn't hear anything I'd see Chris and I'd sing for him and I'd read some script, which I've never read a script before in my life, so I didn't know. I was like, these bits in brackets, am I supposed to read those? They're like, no, that's stage direction. So I thought, okay. I didn't have a clue. And then finally, September, it was the day after my 30th birthday, my life changed. Literally, I flew to New York, I did my audition, and I got the role. And since then, your 30s are great. I love them. Literally, it's amazing. I mean, it's been pretty incredible, and the whole journey from workshop to rehearsing for Paris, performing in Paris, rehearsing again for Broadway, opening, and now all this crazy award stuff as well. It's pretty incredible.
I mean, how many people can say their first audition was in a shower stall? Right? You went to a dressing room?
Yeah, well, so I asked Leanne if she'd sung, and she said, yeah, well, I only ever really sing in the shower. So I'm like, because the acoustics are good. So I'm like, okay, well, listen, that's probably a good place to start. So I grabbed her, and we went into, I can't remember whether it was the ladies or the men's.
It
was the ladies' dressing room. There was no one else in there, and we didn't turn the water on, just in case you were wondering. And she sang The Man I Love very beautifully, and
that's debatable. I hope nobody ever sees that video ever again.
Well, you know,
Let's roll the clip. Yeah. I believe we have it.
Exactly.
I do actually have a great little video of you doing that first line reading, and because I was trying to give you my best Jerry Mulligan, and when I look back on it, it's so sweet because you're really, you're reading it off the, I think you were reading it off the iPad.
Yeah.
So you're sitting and I'm giving it like full out with feeling. It's kind of embarrassing when you see the shot because there's beautiful Leanne kind of sitting there quietly and very sensitively, obviously reading, reading beautifully, and then my terrible hammy over-the-top acting sort of stealing the scene. But no, it was very clear from the beginning that Leanne really had the potential for this role, and my goodness, has that grown and just sort of and flown. Yeah.
Max, for you, because this is not a role with all the dancing. You never considered yourself a traditional dancer, did you?
No, never. No, I have zero training. I consider myself as someone maybe who would have been. I feel like I have a decent amount of rhythm and movement. And I've always loved it. I mean, as a kid, I would put on like whatever shoes made the biggest sound. My mom had this like trunk in her bedroom, and I'd get on top of it to pretend to tap. I wasn't really tapping. It was just making any sound I could because I loved watching all these old films and everything. But my first audition, well over a year and a half ago, was for Brandon's part of Adam. And I fell in love with there wasn't a script yet. It was just a treatment. I thought, oh my God, this is going to be, just reading the description of what it would be was enough for me to go, I have to be a part of this. But I wasn't. It just wasn't the right fit. And at the end of my audition, at the end of my audition, at the end of the audition, Chris looked at me and he said, "Do you tap?" And I said, "No, never." And that was it. Never heard from them again until months later. And I don't know what changed, but they agreed to see me as Henri. I went through the long process: acting, singing. I would sing the song, and I was getting laughs, and I didn't know why. And I was just thought maybe I think they're laughing with me. I don't think they're laughing at me.
No,
so
we were laughing at you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe I was bringing something kind of fun, and then they agreed to have me come into a dance call, and I was dancing with like some of Broadway and the ballet world's best dancers, and it was not pretty. I mean, I was really struggling.
Yeah, but you went for it.
I went. Let's roll it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I did. I went for it, and I still had fun somehow, and I just tried to, like, crack some jokes, because what else could I do? I mean, I couldn't do it, so what am I going to do? Pretend like if, you don't want to be, like, in dance clothes, like, living as if you're really doing it well, but you're awful. So you have to acknowledge that you're awful. And I knew maybe it's the kind of thing, because I've had to dance in other shows, and after a couple of months or years, it starts to, you feel like you start to get it. But I think maybe something clicked in there. Or Rachel, one of the casting directors, towards the end of the session, she just went, "Max, come here." She's like, "I think we've put you through enough." And so they let me go. Yeah.
I remember saying to Rachel, we should really let
because I mean, at
Max
that point, I could like barely walk. I was struggling, and I thought, and I was really sad. Actually, I left, and I just thought, this isn't going to happen for me. And I thought, what a shame, because I've never gone into an audition process and thought, this is mine. Like I maybe I was wrong, but I mean that's the feeling I had, that this was my role. Somehow I had to play this part, and I thought, what a shame, because it's not going to happen because I don't have the dancing technique. And then weeks later, somehow it just worked out, and I got the role. And I remember I was in LA at the time. I just started crying. I couldn't. It was the first time I think I've cried, like when my agent said, "You're doing the American in Paris workshop," and I've stayed with it now through Paris and onto Broadway, obviously. And it's just, I consider myself so lucky that that they all took the chance on someone who maybe wasn't at the dancing level that he would have wished for the show, but then he took me and put me and worked the role around what I could do, and Craig as well, I think from the beginning saw what I could do and has tailored the book to all of us really for what we can do, which only helps all of us. Why force us in a direction that it's not going to happen? So they've really created these things now further on us, which is, it's rare to have that. So we really feel ownership in a lot of these roles. So it's incredible. I could go on, but gone on enough.
Veanne, for you.
Oh, I was going to take your mic. Sorry. Hi again. Well, I'm pretty sure that after being in the business for 300 years, 400 because I worked with Shakespeare. So I'm pretty sure that Craig Lucas got me the job. I'm not positive of that, but I think I think that he knew who I was because we've been around for a long time. And I think that's right. I don't know. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know how I got the job. Let's just put it that way. But 400 years in the business counts for something. So I was just offered the job. I didn't have to audition. I'm just lucky they've kept me through the process because I did do the workshop and then Paris and now New York, and I feel very lucky that somebody liked me out there and knew that I was capable of something, and it's been a joy and very hard work, never easy, it never is, never should be. Art is hard, and but it's all a wonderful thing that a gift that I've been given personally to be part of this show. And whoever I'm grateful to will have to let me know someday, for sure. Thank you.
Is that the story?
Actually, I think it was your appearance on Smash that got you the role.
Okay,
Let's
so
roll
television that I do not believe in got me my role in theater that I do believe in.
Hey,
No,
that's
you know
why
what,
you do
Leanne?
it.
It was a combination of, all of us knowing how wonderful of an actress you are, and also I saw you in Company years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was sitting next to Brandon, who was this big.
Wow. So we
That's
have
when I got the
we
role
have to
in
thank
this.
Sondheim for getting me my part in this show. Well, I think there's a lot that goes into when you're someone who's been around for a long time. And so thank you, Smash. Thank you, television. I love television. Television is fantastic. I don't have one, but clearly someone else does.
It's true. She doesn't. She doesn't have a television.
Okay, on to you, my darling.
Brandon, for you.
Thank you. Sorry, Max. I got involved.
It worked out.
It worked out.
It worked out.
No, I got involved a couple of years ago when they first were doing the 29-hour reading, and like Max said, it was just, there was no script, there was no dialogue, it was just this 20-page treatment, which was just sort of a description and just brought you through exactly what the show would feel like. And the first page just said, curtain up, concerto in F. And I was like, oh my God, because I grew up listening to Gershwin. I went on a family vacation when I was like 9 years old to Wyoming. My dad forced us to go listen to the Wyoming Symphony play a night of Gershwin when we were, when all I wanted to do was go look at like bears and moose tracks. And, so I grew up listening to it and sort of revering this music, and to just know that all of this orchestral music was going to get as much respect and time and, stuff on stage, I was like, oh, I have to be a part of this. This sounds like the most magical, truly Gershwin musical to come around. And I knew nothing about Chris. And then I looked him up, and I was like, oh, he's like kind of a big deal. I guess I should go in for this. And I went in, and I fell in love, and I knew Craig's work very well. And I just love I think he's such a wordsmith, and he's so good at what he does, and I loved the scenes that they gave me, and I just really tried to sink my teeth into it. It's the most delicious thing you can do as an actor, and like I said, this is sort of the culmination of everything I've wanted to do and dreamed of doing as a kid, and I just can't believe that it's all still going as well as it is. I mean, I can't even. It's like I can't even articulate what it's been like. And even when we did the reading, I mean, Chris was totally new and fresh to directing, and it became. But I just knew that he's so aesthetically and visually minded in such a beautiful, brilliant, meticulous way that the reading became about not only the relationships and the words and the songs, but also about our physical relationships to each other. I don't know if you remember, but when we did it, there was music standography that is not usually a part of a 29-hour reading. You usually just sort of stand at music stands and read just to hear it out loud, but he was giving such life to something that could be so stagnant. And I was like, oh, this is going to be really special. And then even in the workshop, when we just had these panels that have made it onto the Broadway stage, because he did such a brilliant job of choreographing all of this stuff that they just dance and pirouette and swirl, and it's beautiful.
Your out-of-town tryout was Paris. I mean, Stuart, how did that all happen?
There was a producer in Paris named Jean-Luc Chopin, who at the same time my partner Veanne and I were chasing the rights to American in Paris, was simultaneously trying to get it for a new production in Paris. Jean-Luc runs a theater called the Theater du Châtelet, where about 10 years ago, when he went there, they began the first introduction of American musicals in English for the French audience. France, unlike most of Europe, which has over the last 30 years embraced the Broadway or West End major musical, France had been kind of the last to the table. So they had never heard Sondheim. They had never had Rodgers and Hammerstein there. And Jean-Luc decided he would introduce them and perform them in the language in which they were written. So 7 years after that, there was at least a small audience who was ready to, there was game for being able to engage with that process. And he had a similar idea that Veanne and I did, which was perhaps An American in Paris, having never been on stage, might be a great title for Paris. So at the same time he and I were going off to get the rights separately, we got them, and then I was introduced to him, but it turned out I actually knew him. We worked together many years before, but I did not know that he was this person who was actually chasing the rights. So, long story short is he said, if you put this show together with the kind of artists that I think would be a good fit for us at Châtelet, come back to me. And right about the time of the reading that these guys were talking about, we were beginning to look for a home for our first production because we really wanted to go somewhere before we came into New York. And Jean-Luc read the treatment, and he said, you couldn't have hired anybody more perfect than Christopher Wheeldon and Craig Lucas and Bob Crowley and Tasha Katz, and that was it. It was it took a while before it all came together, but it was a miraculous experience. And I would say that there was some, as much as it provided us a wonderful experience, and in retrospect, an unbelievable opportunity to put our show together, particularly for Craig, it was not the easiest place to be because we had a French-speaking audience looking at subtitles in English. So there were things, Craig said right off the bat, there's things we're not going to learn in Paris about the show, and he was right. We learned a lot, and then we were able to make certain changes between Paris and New York, but then it was once we started in front of a Broadway audience that we got to really finish the work. So we needed every step in our process to get where we were going.
For the actors and for you two, going to Paris, you're doing the musical about that, to be there, to live in the space, to go to these places, what it meant to each of you. And how helpful was it?
Well, I'm certainly, what better research for all of us to be walking along the Seine to work every day and popping into a real boulangerie and not an au bon pain, but you know, a real one. And conversing with the locals, and it was really amazing. Although for the most part, we spent most of our time in a darkened theatre, of course, because that's what happens during tech and previews. But for me, it was very special. I danced as a 19-year-old at the Théâtre du Châtelet with the New York City Ballet when I was still dancing. So I knew the boards, and it's really just the most magnificent old theatre. And you know, the Saison Russe famously had its first season there. The collaboration between Massine and Cocteau and Picasso. I mean, this is a really historical stage. So how thrilling for us to be presenting American in Paris there first. And dinner break was amazing.
Oh, I could imagine.
I mean,
Craig, for you, what you learned about the process of a show over there in Paris?
If you're used to New York theater, Paris is not very helpful because the audience pays very close attention, and they have boundless patience, and they love complexity, and they don't want to be spoon-fed. So you don't learn what it's really like to play on Broadway, where the audience is going to run up the aisle to get their car, even though they loved it, and turn their back on the actors. So I loved Paris. It was unbelievably great. You can see the sky. No one honks their horn. No one shouts, "Move, you mofo." It's a lovely, civilized dream of a place. And Broadway was a very big shock for Grandpa. I liked Paris.
For the cast being there, creating these roles in that environment, what it meant to the four of you?
Obviously, playing a French character was pretty priceless research being there. I spent a lot of time sitting in cafes just watching the French women go about their business every day. And French women are very special. They have the je ne sais quoi. They have something that you just can't put your finger on. They just have something about them. And to try and put that into Lise and to learn from those women was amazing. And, you know, I got a chance to take ballet class at the Paris Opera while I was there, which was very scary and amazing at the same time, because an hour and a half later, I was on stage in the set that Bob Crowley had created, which was the studio I had just taken class in, which was pretty incredible. The Galerie Lafayette was just across the road. I lived as much as I could. I tried to live Lisa's life. And, you know, we walked along the Champs-Élysées and almost chose a mansion that the Burrells would have lived in. So it was the most special time. And also, it's terrible. I'm British, and Paris is so close, and I'd never been before. So to live there for 2 months was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it was surreal. It proved to be invaluable. I mean, who gets that opportunity to? We weren't trying out, you know, Guys and Dolls in Paris. We were doing an American in Paris, and what's still so unique about Paris and a lot of other European cities, unlike New York, which is an incredible city. But if you're doing On the Town in New York, New York is not how it was in, what's the year of On the Town? Late 40s. Paris, you walk around, and central Paris, it's been zoned in a way you can't just tear down a building. The facade, everything has to be rebuilt, renovated, you know, restored, essentially. You walk around, and as I walked around, that's what I saw is what Henri Borel would see. Like you were saying, I found this mansion in the 16th arrondissement that I just immediately I connected to these gorgeous arched French doors and this beautiful terrace. And when Lise and Jerry have this argument in Act 2 of our show, I'm not even seeing the palace. Like, I'm seeing this home and this terrace and imagining. And we as actors, you're expected to do all of that work on your own and go to library, get books, imagine your surroundings, your environment, what your home looks like. We just lived it. I mean, we just saw it, we had it, we experienced it, walking along the Seine on the cobblestone paths. it's probably the exact same cobblestone that Henri Borel would have walked on, where she meets Jerry and he sketches her. It's the exact same location, looks virtually the same. That's really magical. It was an incredible, gift, surreal experience. I've never had that. I don't think we'll all have great theatrical experiences in our future, I'm sure. But this one is like this gem, this moment in our careers that you will not be recreated. It's just impossible.
What can I add?
The Crips?
Okay.
Tell them about the Crips.
Well, I will say something about the fact that when we arrived there, much like Paris is a wonderful city of history and art and the melding of life and art, much like everywhere big about New York City too. I won't take that away from it, but you can't take that away from New York City either. But at the Musée de Carnavalet, when we arrived, 4 days after we arrived, they opened up an exhibition of photographs and video from the Liberation. And it was there, we all went, and I remember walking through the rooms thinking, these are the images of which I am going to utilize in my soul, in my cells. This is a gift from Paris, and I'm sure they didn't do it for us. But it seemed to be perfect timing to be able to educate us. So there was education everywhere. And in that specific instance, I found myself watching a video over and over that made me understand on a deeper level who my character was when I walked onto the stage and what she had experienced. And so there was so much for us to pull from in Paris, and also utilizing observation of the Parisians, and also because they have a sense of war in their cells. I think it's something that reveals itself. They're not even aware of it. But when you go over as an American outside of 9/11, we have not experienced the war on our soil. And so there is something in their beings that we were able to witness and participate in, even when they didn't know we were. It was very rich and very valuable. And like you said, it may never happen again. This may never. So it was truly wonderful. Brandon, on to you.
Thank you, Veanne. That was beautiful. I'm going to be perfectly frank. I was quite nervous to go over to Paris, actually. I was filled with a little trepidation. The political climate over there, particularly for the Jewish community in recent years quite recently, has been somewhat tumultuous. So I was a little bit nervous about going over there, particularly in a sort of high-profile project playing a Jewish American at the time of World War II. I was a little bit fearful, but what I didn't know was that it was like this huge gift to have this sort of engendered fear in me that I could use on stage. And luckily, once we got there, they welcomed us with the warmest, most open arms. I mean, it was the most beautiful response. And also, a lot of my character has written into him this acerbic Jewish American sharp wit. There's a quickness to him that is so American and so New York even. And I was worried that it just wouldn't land there. And, we had the super titles in French, so it landed, but it landed like 2.5 seconds later. And that was an interesting obstacle, too. But again, that fear of walking the streets and walking through the what was it, Vieille du Temple? Is that where that street, the sort of Jewish quarters? And there was an attack there a few days after we left. And so to feel that and to be able to bring that fear on stage is sort of this truth and authenticity that you can't really make up. And just to, like everybody said, walking the streets and knowing that at this corner there was a blockade here, that these cobblestones were literally dug up at the time of the liberation. It's a palpable, tangible thing. It's tangible research that you can't just get from a book or a documentary or something. I mean, you're living it. And it informs what we do on stage here as well. I mean, we took that experience and that authenticity, and I think brought it to New York audiences who, you know, as much as the wit and the dry humor that my character has that may not have landed for the French audience, there are certain, like you said, the war is in their cells, it's in their blood. The occupation is something that lives deep inside of them. That may not necessarily land as well for a New York audience. So that authenticity we can give to Broadway, which I think it was just a gift through and through, I think.
Yeah. You know, everything about this show, like I mentioned, is perfect. All your interpretations, your performances, your roles. I read something where you said you worked outside of your comfort zone, but then so did everybody on this project. Would you agree when you were all working on these roles? There's nothing like an original cast either, because like you said, Max, you are Henri. I mean, these roles were all put together and rewritten with all these people in mind. Talk about that whole thing. Did your roles change a lot during the process? When did you finally say, I think I have them now, or the roles were fully, you know, envisioned and working outside of your comfort zone to make this perfect?
I don't think I was ever in my comfort zone, actually, to be perfectly honest, and in a good way. I mean, it really that was sort of part of what fueled the creative process. Just going back to the auditions, I was really because I hadn't been through the audition process before. I was very nervous about that, and I didn't even really know how to conduct a proper audition. And thank goodness I had this man by my side and had Stuart, you know, by my side. Guiding, but it became very clear, and I forget who it was that we cast first, but you know, you guys often had to wait for weeks to find out whether you'd got the role or not. But I remember a conversation we had after Max had come in. One of the reasons we wanted Max in for the role of Adam, because originally we wanted him to actually play, and Max is, you know, a concert level pianist, so. But it was very clear at the end of his audition that Max was Henri, and I remember turning to you guys and saying, "But he's not Adam, he's Henri." So as we went along, and then Brandon came in, it just when the right person came in the room, you just kind of knew it. Yeah. So that was really exciting. But yeah, I was learning on the job, and I think really the way that I got through it was just staying open and listening to all of these fantastic people around me, and learning that, you know, working with good actors is as much about trusting them and allowing them to find things for themselves as it is actually telling them what to do. I mean, you don't really need to tell a fabulous actor what to do. They know, and it's about shaping and guiding, and of course, you know, the dancing was often where I would go first, because that's what I know, that's the language I know, and the reading ended up being that way because that's all I knew really what to do at that moment was, oh, okay, well, I don't really know what to say to them, but perhaps we can just angle the music stands a little bit, and maybe that's going to create a tension or a dynamic, and so it's been a vertical learning curve. Yeah. It really has, and just I'm so excited and so thrilled that we're up here sitting chatting to you, and totally. We aren't all looking for new jobs.
I was just going to say, I feel like I want to field it over to Leanne, because talk about comfort zone, pushing your limits and learning completely new things that you haven't done before. But I was just going to say one quick thing about it all, is that it's much less scary when there's so many people in the room doing things that they've never done before, and that they have to just jump off a cliff and hope their parachute opens, and we're all going to be each other's parachutes. Normally, in when you're doing a show, it's a real no-no to sort of give someone a note, and it really still is. But what happened in our production, because everyone was trying something new, that we would just go to someone, or I'd ask him about an acting moment, because I think he's such a brilliant actor. Robbie has come to me about some vocal things. I've gone to him about, I'll be like, what's turnout? You know, I get all these notes about my legs being open and fingers. I'm like, why can't I just hold my arm out? But it's like, you know, all these things about the movement that I don't know, but I felt so comfortable just walking up to Robbie and asking him these things. And I think everyone, when you know there's so many people in the room doing something they've never done before, the fear level just you go, okay, we could all lean on each other. And I don't know if you want to expand on that or anyone else, but it wasn't as scary because we were all like, all right, we're all doing this together.
Yeah. I mean, Leanne, you had learned to sing. You do everything in the show now.
Yeah, I have to say it's probably the most terrifying experience of my life, as well as being the most exhilarating experience of my life. But I remember Chris saying to me, do something that scares you every day. I'm like, I am. I've just left my husband in London and moved to New York. That's pretty scary to start with. You know, I never thought, you know, I keep on mentioning my age, but I danced with the Royal Ballet for 12 years. And then to suddenly, you know, dancers are mute. We never say anything. We're not even really allowed to ask questions. We're just told what to do and we do it. And it's true.
We have a very open dialogue in my studio, Leanne.
But now I have to be told to shut up sometimes because I'm asking too many questions. And, you know, I want to know more. I feel like the best thing to be is a sponge and to absorb as much as you possibly can, to saturate yourself with this amazing talent that you're surrounded by every day. But I still get scared every night. I'm still terrified, and well, not terrified, but you know, and the thing I'm most scared of still is the ballet, because I think that's what people expect me to be good at because I'm a ballet dancer. And I think, oh, well, if the singing goes okay and the acting goes okay, that's a bonus. But they're expecting me to be good at the ballet. So I sit there and I watch Stairway, and I can feel my stomach like churning and like, okay, the ballet's coming. And it's just, I don't think I'm ever going to get over that. But yeah, it's okay. I don't mind. It's actually really exciting. And it's also strange for me doing 8 shows a week. And doing the same thing every night is very strange, because as the background I come from, we do 13 different productions a year. We're rehearsing 5 different ballets in the day, doing a different ballet in the evening. So to do the same thing every day is also a huge gift, because we've got to a stage now where I think we can play a little bit, if we're allowed to. Just, you know, and you know, we're not robots. We're not going to do the same thing every night. This isn't a movie. It's live theatre, and things go wrong, but then you react in a different way, and that makes it more interesting every night. And, you know, it depends on what mood you're in, what mood the conductor's in, and it makes the live theatre so exciting. And for me, that's the most exciting thing about this whole experience. Terrifying, but exciting.
I love that. You know, Max, Stairway to Paradise, I mean, another show-stopping number. How long did you work on that, Christopher, with him? How long did you work on the number, and how did you perfect it? And when did you have a breakthrough moment where you said to yourself, I have it?
No. But I go out there as if I have it, you know what I mean? And even because there was time, I feel like now, you know, even the movement, I kind of have it, but there were times in Paris and certainly in the workshop, like, no way did I have it by any means. But when you step out there, you have it. As Henri, in that moment, you have it. And it's a fantasy. And Henri struggles anyway. He's not he shouldn't be some perfect, refined song and dance man. He wants to be one. He should have some sort of, you know, traits that are a little bit off. And I don't know, that number seemed to kind of work from early on. The arrangement by Sam Davis is really terrific. The choreography, right from the structure of it in the workshop, it hasn't changed too much.
No.
It's just seemed, I mean, that's talk about a gift. Like, I've dreamed about a number like that since I was probably 8 years old, watching big MGM musicals, movie musicals, and I've waited my whole life to be in a number like that.
Can we just point out also that there's no stairway, which is my favorite thing.
I like it. We create it for people.
I think it's an incredible fantasy, because I think everybody in that audience has that dream of doing a production number like that in their mind, and that's how it plays out on stage. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. thank you, everyone, Chris, the whole creative team. I love it. I mean, it's really like a complete dream moment. My only problem with the show is sometimes during it, I think about the number and I start to get excited. I'm like, hang on, you're not even, it's a fantasy. It hasn't happened yet. And you're in another scene, but I know it's coming and I get to do it. And I sometimes think about it earlier in the show and I just go, forget it. Because it needs to just happen for me. But it's incredible.
Yeah. For you two at the end, the comfort zone thing, working on these roles and perfecting them and all. A story?
Go ahead.
You were about to grab your mic.
No, yours is already in your hand.
It is. Well, I just kind of want to piggyback on what Leanne was saying about us all sort of learning from, and Max too, about us all sort of learning from each other. I think something that's contributed to the success of our show has been us stepping out of our comfort zones and has created this sort of realm of constant discovery and just experimentation and trying something new. And the thing is you can have all of the training in the world as an actor, and you can get up and do a scene with someone, and it's still like talking to a brick wall. I think the beautiful thing is, and I talk about this often, is Leanne is actually one of the most exquisite listeners I've ever acted with on a stage before. And I think that comes from the newness of it all and the willingness to just jump into scary territory. And so every time I'm with her on stage, I feel like we're discovering something new and we're really in the moment. I feel, sometimes when you're with actors who have been doing this for so long, there's a certain sense of narcissism there and it becomes all about them, and it should be this, game of tennis of going back and forth, and she is so open, her heart is so open every night that you just make eye contact with her and you don't have to do any work because she's listening to you. And when it's all about reacting and listening and reacting to each other, it's just makes my job that much easier. And I think that is sort of what people are responding to, is there's a newness to it all and a willingness and a passion. And I think that's what sets it apart. I mean, there's something to be said for stepping out of your comfort zone, but there also has to be something to be said for being willing and ready to take that leap. And everybody in that room has and is. And that's the best gift of this whole thing, I think.
Veanne, for you.
Oh, I'm the old narcissist. I'm totally not. But there was the challenges with this role for me, stepping out of my comfort zone. I mean, I'm most comfortable when I go on stage and just stay there. So, there's a certain freedom. This is this is the truth. When you walk on stage and you get to stay there for a long time, you just live it and you make mistakes and then you breathe and you act and you go back and forth and the ball goes back and forth, and there's a certain freedom and joy in living a life on the stage. And with Madame Borel, I have to bring a whole bunch of stuff on the stage with me and do it in 5 lines over and over again. And it's one of the hardest things I've ever done in trying to create a life in a musical with no song, and
we can put one in if you want.
You could go out on
for
tour.
The Tonys.
Yes, right. I'm going to do a show at Studio 54. No, I'm joking. Where it's all about me. No, okay. But it is really hard to bring, first of all, it's hard to bring 30, 40 years of experience into a role that is not small. It is rich, and there's a time barrier in creating a life in a much smaller circle. And so it's hard to come on stage and create the war and the life that it has created in my character and bring it on stage with me, with my son, and with I like to think of her as my daughter because I took her on and protected her. And you have to do that in 5 lines and be funny and to have gravitas and it's challenging and rewarding, and it is way out of my comfort zone, but it's always, as an artist, you dream of the challenge. You dream of the thing that causes you pain. and I mean good pain, but it is pain nonetheless. And so it has been richly rewarding for all of us to find this play. And many times people come up to me and say, you know, it's such an adult experience. I hear that a lot. And they come up and say, it's such an adult experience. It's wonderful to see a show that is not catering to other things, but things that are mature, and ideas that are mature, and time and history and space that is mature. And then, of course, you have the 7-year-olds that you come out on the stage afterwards, and they're standing there with their autograph, looking for your autograph, saying that it's the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. And so it's a joy to be in a play that is reaching all stratus, all this class and age, and it all disappears into this beautiful piece that we're doing. And it's because of all of our hard work and all of our moving away from our comfort zones.
Yeah. No, because the audience follows everyone's journey in this show. I mean, you get beautiful laughs, Veanne. You know, people feel the pain your character goes through. It must feel really great to like walk out there and watch the way, or all of you, how the audience reacts to this show. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's it like for all of you? You're playing the Palace. I mean, I was there the night. I looked in the back. The third balcony was packed to the rafters. I mean, no one has sold the third balcony of the Palace in years. They never opened it for the past few shows that have been there. So it's so great to go there and watch. It must be so great for you to feel the audience's reaction in that house. What's it like for you two sitting in the house watching how An American in Paris, and for you, Stuart, how it affects an audience?
Well, I mean, we had the most exciting response from the audience. They've been exciting across the boards, but the first audience that we put the show in front of was our dress rehearsal audience in Paris, and we'd had a really, really stressful morning. We hadn't run the show. We'd agreed, our producer host in Paris had very kindly said, we're going to give you the orchestra for an extra 3 hours the morning of the dress rehearsal, but you have to promise that you'll run the show, because you keep stopping. And I'm like, well, I'm sort of stopping because people's lives are potentially at risk here. So, you know, we're not really stopping on purpose. But he said, you know, Christopher, you need to run the show before you do it for an audience tonight. So I said, fine, okay, no, I'll put the microphone down. I'll go up to the balcony. I'll sit quietly. So the orchestra get into place, the curtain goes up, and within, I'd say, about 30 seconds, a giant piece of scenery snaps in half and falls into the middle of the stage. Thank goodness there was no one on stage at the time. Nobody was hurt. We were all a bit shaken up. And so we brought the safety curtain in, the iron curtain, and we had the cast just come out, sit in the first couple of rows of the orchestra. The principal's up on stage. And we read the show with the orchestra. And it was the most wonderful, bonding, focusing moment. And that night we were all scared out of our wits. We had no idea what was going to happen, but we decided, with much encouragement from the Théâtre du Châtelet, they'd never cancelled a dress rehearsal, that we should do it, and we did. And at the end of the show, there was this kind of cathartic release, I think, from all of us, because the audience just stood up, and it was more than applause. It was love and appreciation for the risk that we took to tell a truthful story about these brave people at a time of the liberation. And quite honestly, if I'd known we were going there with our show the year of the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Paris, which is why they had the exhibition, I would have been even more terrified than I was. But it was such a great feeling because we felt the French people, the Parisians, really embrace our show. And I do believe it's because of the risks that Craig took in his writing, and the fact that we weren't afraid to show, you know, the darkness, the ugly side, the fear, and then use that as a place for our romance to just kind of emerge from and blossom from, making it more, you know, exciting and potent and moving. So that audience experience was just magical, I think, for everyone. And then the day we left, our final show, I think a lot of people must have come back that had seen the show already, and the house lights went up, and all the crew and the makeup artists and the dressers, everyone came out on stage, and the audience, the house lights were brought up, and the audience were taking photographs of us, and the cast were taking photographs of the audience. It was just it was a love-in all round. It really was. So, but it's so exciting, and of course, how better could it be to be standing at the back of the house and feeling the audience connect with our show and love these guys and laugh with them and cry with them and be moved by their dancing and follow the story when there are no words. Yeah. I mean, for me, that's always terrifically exciting because that's a bit of a fear. So it's been magical. It really has. We use that word a lot, but it's really honestly been magical, and the bar has been set very high, and people keep asking me, are you going to do another one? And I'm like, oh goodness. I mean, how amazing to have this be, our first experience on Broadway.
Yeah. It's absolutely perfect. This whole musical is. Craig, for you, sitting in the house at the Palace, watching how an audience reacts to this beautiful musical.
I was a Broadway chorus singer in my 20s, and so I worked in these houses, and I found that my emotional connection was usually with the writers and with the crew. And, the stagehands get a lot of flack, but they're really heroic people. And coming to the Palace was really moving because the doorman had read the script. He said, boy, you changed the movie a lot. And I thought, you read the script? My mother-in-law doesn't want to see the show. The woman in the ticket booth said, I read the script. And I was like, what's going on? Do I have a publicist and I don't know I'm paying someone? And Chris sent food. They were working overtime and it really was a crunch. And I've never seen a crew so kind of connected. And we had this first run through and we were like, it's you guys were amazing. And the stagehand looked at Chris and said, it's going to be a lot better. And I thought, who are you? And is this New York? I mean, it's an incredible house. Yeah. They are so respectful during the show. They walk around like it's an artwork that they're helping take care of. I love that house, and I've worked in a lot of houses where it's not like that. I went to see a play directed by a friend the other day at another Broadway house, and the usher, whose name I can't say, said to me, "Isn't this a stinker?" And I was like, honey, you really... So it's been really moving. It's been so moving to me, and it was very scary at first because, our first preview, I'm always outside of my comfort zone. I don't have a comfort zone. I love to know what that is. But, at the first intermission, I'm sitting there in the seat thinking, I hope no one stabs me. And this man is talking to his wife behind me, and he looks around and he says, "Well, they don't look unhappy." And I said, "Well, why should they look unhappy?" And he said, "Oh, what are you, the writer?" It's very hard.
Stuart, for you, sitting in the house at the Palace, watching how audiences love this musical.
People that particular that come, they're your friends or your family or colleagues, and we're pretty supportive business. We don't tend to walk backstage or walk up to people and say, I'm sorry, it wasn't very good, But this is one of those shows where people don't seem to have to hold back. They seem to authentically fall under the spell of the show. One of the ways that happens most is that there's still those people, and I know this from the moment we started to fund the show before our workshop, there are the people who walk in and go, I don't like dance. It's not my thing. And I have to say, everybody who walks in saying that walks out going, I didn't know I could have that reaction to dance. So there's a kind of, there's just a remarkable enthusiasm being in the house with a hit. I mean, it happens rarely. That's the bottom line. This is unusual. So when we say, how does it feel to be in the theater? It's a gift every night because they may feel they have a bad show on a particular moment or something happens that throws them off. But for the audience, the experience of being in a theater where they feel fortunate to be there and then we exceed their expectations every night, that's a once in a lifetime.
Yeah. Christopher, I wanted to go back to you. You effortlessly have blended the world of ballet and musical theater. How did you find the perfect balance? Was it a challenge anytime during the process?
Oh, yes. Gosh, how did I find the perfect balance? I don't know how it all happened. It was all a dream. No, it really became about, I guess, really just finding the right moments for the dance to take over the storytelling. And, it's tricky. You have to be careful about choosing those moments because you can express complex emotions with a simple gesture or the turn of a head, and you can be poetic. But if you're actually trying to tell a very clear story to an audience that perhaps haven't seen that much dance before, you have to take that into account. And so you want to still be creative with the language of the movement, but at the same time, you need to make sure that the plot's clear. So a combination of spending time with this lovely man and with Rob, and really sort of working through the scenes and sort of picking our moments, I guess, to then inject these big dance moments.
Yeah. You have 3 big ballets in the show. It's Second Rhapsody, which is at the end of Act 1, right? Yeah. And then you have the American in Paris ballet towards the end of the show, and then there's the fantasy ballet, the other ballet, right?
The opening ballet.
The opening ballet.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to put them together? Because you also, it's all original, but you throw this nice little homage into the world of MGM and the film.
Yeah, well, those ballets, I started with working on quite a lot of the dance vocabulary because that was my comfort zone. That was the world that I knew, and so I think the opening ballet was sort of the starting point, and we also had to set the tone for the show, and describe the world that our love story was going to come out of, the dark sort of murky mist that that these beautiful flowers would bloom from. So that was sort of the place. I tend to work very quickly once we get into the movement vocabulary. So that all sort of flew by. And we really only had about 6 weeks to do the entire show. So it was we were against the clock.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
I want to just point out that Chris reworked every second of this show over and over and over again. I've never been with a more conscientious artist who listens to every note. I was apoplectic at the number of opinions that were flying at us, but Chris was like, no, I'm listening for what they're not getting. And he sort of seemed to have forgotten about a note, and then a week later, when he reworked the beginning of Liza and your reticence to dance with him changed the entire scene, and it became a completely different event. And the opening ballet, which is so masterful now, was completely redone, and then completely redone again, and cut, and reshaped, and moments were rethought. And Chris is willing to live with a question for a long time. I don't know is a really valid answer, but so many people in theater feel they have to pretend to know. So it was really, really, really moving and exciting to be with someone that brave, and I just feel like there isn't anybody doing this kind of work. It's just staggering.
When did you
Please
freeze?
be careful crossing the street.
When did you freeze the show?
We froze the show probably about 5 performances before the press started to come in. And the preview process is brand new for us, Leanne and Robbie, all of us from the ballet world. Our press night is our opening night, and the only time an audience has seen our productions is the dress rehearsal. So, it's kind of terrifying. And so I remember first meeting with Stuart, and Stuart was very concerned about the number of previews that we had. That's not going to be enough. Is 4 weeks going to be okay? And I'm like, 4 weeks of previews? That's going to be more time than we're going to know what to do with. And of course, that wasn't the case, I discovered, because, and of course, I was bitten by the bug of having the luxury of this time and having the actors in the afternoon and just marveled at the brilliance of how we'd make a change and they'd learn the change, but then they'd do the old scene in the evening, and how Robbie and Leanne handled this. I mean, you guys have had experience doing that, but how these guys handled it. And they more often than not, they were like, oh, we'll just do the new scene tonight. It doesn't matter. We don't need another day. They just kind of slot it right in.
Yeah.
So that fearlessness was just was very inspiring for me, and it actually gave me the courage to kind of push on and push harder and look and dig deeper and then these guys as well. It's learning that actors have to truly believe and feel connected to every word that they say. As dancers, we go out on stage and sometimes we don't like the steps, or we kind of don't really believe in what we're doing, but we sort of get on with it, and some parts of it are okay, and it's a much sort of rougher process in a way. But the way that these guys just question, and you just see them kind of slowly sculpting their characters. I learned so much from having the opportunity to work with them, and will take everything that I've learned from this incredible group of people on with me to hopefully become, a better director next time. Yeah.
No, because you and I spoke before you came on. You're sitting in a director's chair for the first time, right? For a Broadway show.
As a director.
As a director, yeah.
Yeah. I used to have one of these in my bedroom at home when I was a kid, and it had a little star on the back, and it said director, but I wasn't actually a director then, so...
Well, that's why I want to ask you all a personal question. Do you remember that defining moment when you said, I want to be a performer, I want to make a go at this? Do you remember that moment?
I remember as a 9-year-old standing outside the gates of the Royal Ballet School in Richmond Park in London with my parents. We'd gone for a picnic in the park, and I'd insisted that we eat right next to the Royal Ballet School. And I wasn't a student yet, and I said, I want to go there. This is where I want to go. And at 9 years old, kind of knowing that was my path, I'm very fortunate to have known that at such an early age. And the fireman and the pilot, that all sort of went out the window.
With the director's chair in your house.
Yeah, with the director's chair.
Craig, for you.
My parents took me to see Oliver when I was a tyke, and I remember watching all of the Fagin's boys going in through the stage door, and I said, I want to be with them. And my parents thought that I wanted to be a performer, but I was just attracted to the boys. And it was a very big and long misunderstanding between my parents and myself.
I don't think I can remember the exact moment, but I remember my first trip to the theatre was to see Gigi. I started ballet when I was about 5, and my ballet teacher said to my mum, you should take Leanne to the theatre. I'd never seen a ballet before. I didn't see a ballet until I went to the Royal Ballet School. I don't know why I wanted to be a ballerina. I'd never actually seen a ballet. But I'd seen lots of musicals, and Gigi was the first one, and apparently I was dancing and skipping all the way home, so I'm guessing maybe subconsciously I made a decision in that moment, and then, and now we're here.
Max, for you.
I was really young, I guess like first or second grade. I specifically remember the first time I'd seen anyone like as close as we're sitting, someone playing the piano was the music teacher in my elementary school. and I just didn't understand it. I watched the fingers and I heard the sound. I just was mesmerized. It just didn't. How does someone do it? How does like the mind reach the fingers and then just creates this music? And I went home, asked for a piano, asked for lessons, and it just never stopped. But then years later, the first show I had, Broadway show, not the first show I had seen, but the first show I saw multiple times and knew people in the cast. I was friends with some of the newsboys who were in the Gypsy that Tyne Daly was in. And it was the first time I hung out backstage, first time I saw from the audience a few times, first time I was backstage watching on the monitor, watching Tyne Daly, and the whole experience of it, being a kid, every element, from seeing them from the house to hanging out with them backstage, the way they talk, the friendship, the community, the things you'd see on the call board for events that were going on, Broadway Cares. And I just thought, I'm home. I never felt more welcomed, more normal, more accepted. And I was like, this is where I need to be. And I just can't believe I'm actually there.
It's a threefold, but I'll be quick. So the first time was at the YMCA. My mom took my little sister and I when we were 7, I guess, to go to a dance class. And I remember the teacher had her underwear hanging out from underneath her leotard. It's a real no-no, but anyway. But still, we laugh about that still. And she made us move through the trees. Just move through the trees. And my sister ran screaming from the room and became a fighter pilot with the Air Force. She did. Well, she wasn't a fighter pilot, but she flies for the Air Force anyway. So she became that, and I was mesmerized by movement. That was the beginning, moving through the trees. And then I saw, when I was 9 or 10, my mom took me to see Once Upon a Mattress, and I thought, she could feel the pee. She felt the pee under all of those mattresses. So I was mesmerized by the idea of emotional connection or depth of connection to something so small. And so that was dance, and then that was storytelling in movement and musicals. And then when I was at the Washington Ballet, I went to see A Good Person of Szechuan, and I had to speak. After I saw that show, I thought, well, it's not just about movement for me. I have to utilize everything about my capabilities as a human being in order to create theater that I believed in. And so those 3 things were my defining moments.
Brandon, for you.
I was about 3, I think, and my parents took me to see Peter Pan with Kathy Rigby at the Lunt. And I was on the edge of my seat to the point where my mom said she was like kept having to like pull me back because I was going to fall off. And even though I was 3, she said she had never seen my face look that way. I mean, it's only 3 years, but she saw me every day. So for 3 years, she was like, I've never seen him look like that. And I mean, I'm still waiting for you guys to put Flying by Foy in our show, but one day I'll fly on a Broadway stage. But there was that, and then as I grew older, I was terrible at sports, so I was like, I'll follow that path. And then when I was like a fully functional human, I saw Veanne in Company, and I don't know what it was about her performance of not getting married, and I was sitting in like the 2nd row, I think. Her performance of not getting married sort of connected me to like this adult theatrical experience as a kid through Sondheim and the lyrics, and I was connected to something, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I want to grow up and be that. And here we are. It's so cool. Cheers. But yeah, so it was 3 when I wanted to fly, and then 6 when I wanted to be floating in the Hudson with the other garbage.
Stuart, for you.
Well, I mentioned that when I was 8, I went to see My Fair Lady. My grandfather was a great lover of the musical theater, had no relationship to it, but he came to New York. We lived in Chicago. He came to New York twice a year, and he'd see 8 shows every time he'd come. And they'd say 8 new shows all the time, so he'd bring the records back, and we would study the albums, the stories on the back of the albums, because I didn't really have any way to see the shows. I could only memorize them. And but I never really thought would be what I would do, because I actually thought there were only actors. I didn't understand that there were people behind that made things. I just related to what I saw in front of me. So through high school and college, I acted a little, but I was not the best actor in my college program, so I thought I should probably do something else. And a good friend of mine was a young director, up-and-coming director, turned out to be Robert Falls, and we were in college together, and he was going to direct a play off campus, and I said, can I stage manage for you? And he said, have you ever stage managed before? I said, no, but I think I can do it. And he said, okay. He knew me. He kind of trusted my organizational instincts. I went to meet someone. They gave me $300 and the keys to a building. And for the next 2 months, I produced my first play, and it was the most joyous experience I had ever had at that point. It was like the moment when I knew, oh, there was a place for me in the theater that wasn't in front of the curtain, but where I could be valuable in a different way. And the rest of my life got shaped from that moment.
Beautiful stories. Thank you for those. I have an audience question for Christopher. What was the easiest number to choreograph in the show, and what was the hardest?
Actually, I think the hardest for me was the American in Paris ballet, which is probably surprising, but it's the most iconic moment of dance in the movie, and so exploring our version of what that was going to be was difficult. The most difficult, I think, was probably the opening ballet, and we went back to it several times, as Craig was saying, setting the tone for the work, sort of understanding the sort of rules of an opening number for a musical, but also kind of breaking them. And so there was this sort of battle in a way. But I'm really happy with where we got to. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was probably the toughest one for me.
Yeah. There's a question for Leanne about, there's a soprano in the audience. What specific vocal training was sought and requested for you to remain true to the Gershwin style?
I know very little about vocal training. All I know is what I've learned in the last 18 months. But when I was in London between the workshop and coming back for rehearsals, I had a wonderful teacher called Mark Malin, and I believe I think Stuart probably spoke to him, and also Rob Fisher, and said what they needed for the show. So I think he basically got me ready as much as he could without nothing was set then. We didn't know which key it was going to be, and we didn't know. At one time there was a French verse, there was this, there was that, so we didn't know what it was going to be right then. But not only did I sing The Man I Love with him, but he gave me, I think I sang 5 or 6 other songs that he thought would help me with that specific song. And they weren't Gershwin, they were all sorts of different songs that I sang, but things that were still in the style of Gershwin. And then when I got back to New York, I saw Joan Lader, who is the most remarkable singing coach ever. And she just, the biggest thing she gave me was confidence, I think. Of course, I tried to absorb as much information from her as possible, but for me, the singing was I think the hardest thing. It's terrifying, especially knowing that you're surrounded by people that have sung in Broadway shows for many years, and we recorded the cast album the other week. That was terrifying as well. But yeah, it's. I don't really know. I'd say call Joan Lader and ask her, but that's what I did. It's like when people ask me how did I prepare for the ballet, running on a treadmill for the amount of time of the ballet is the best way to get fit for it, other than doing it. But yeah, I just tried to take everyone's advice I possibly could. And I asked Jill a lot of questions. Jill's not here today, Jill Pace, who plays Milo. Quite often ask her a lot of questions, not just about how to sing it, but how to interpret it as well, because it's the lyrics that are just, for me, if I can tell the story, then if I hit a duff note, maybe people won't notice as much if I'm telling the story as best I can. So I guess that as well.
Yeah. I just have 2 more questions for everybody. If you could each sum up the best part of the experience, of working on An American in Paris, what is it for you? The very best.
Can you start the other end?
Sure. Stuart, for you, we'll start down the other one. I love it.
Well, actually, it's easy on some level is to say that the work that Christopher Wheeldon has brought together is unlike anything I've ever seen. So to be the person that helped you realize your first musical successfully, and the thought that you will potentially go on and make more musicals as well as your world of ballet. I think that we are leaving something for the musical theater that we didn't have before you. So that's the best part of this.
For me, I think for me, watching the ensemble and Chris and all of the principals, everybody in the piece, come together and because what happens is you create a family and you create a care and a concern on a daily basis because we see each other 6 days a week and more. And it's a wonderful, valuable process that we go to as human beings coming together as well. And it's a joy watching all of these people work so hard and have the process pay off for them. It's a tremendous joy to see the thing come to life in who they are as human beings, not just as performers.
For me, the best part is sort of this moment in time right now, being able to sort of stand with all these people who I've grown to love so deeply and intimately as family, and being able to stand at the top of this mountain that we've all climbed together and look down and just be like, look at what we did together. Look at how far we've climbed, and it hasn't necessarily been easy. It's been a tough climb, but we've gotten to, and it's the view that we have now, and being able, in looking back in hindsight at all of the steps that we've taken as a group up this mountain, and to be able to look down and be like, we just did that. That's been the best part, I think.
Yeah, it's really, there are so many gifts from this whole thing. We talk about the show's doing well, Tony nominations, that's all so exciting. But for me, the biggest thing I think was this gift of time. I can't speak for everyone else, but I think we all took on something that was really ambitious and out of our comfort zones. When we all have talked about that actually. And I don't have dance training. I don't have any formal acting training. I need time, and to have done the workshop over a year ago and to start developing all these relationships, then come back to it at a reading, then come back for the rehearsal for Paris, then to do Paris, and then to take time away and then realize, okay, reflect on that, how can we improve, and then to come back and culminate on Broadway at the Palace and all together. And now we all stepped in that room for Broadway rehearsal, and we're all friends, best friends on stage, lovers, confidants, all these things that we had developed, and we came into it together as this family that just wouldn't have happened if we were all cast 3 weeks before the Broadway run and we all met the first day of rehearsal. It was just, we had this gift of this ride together that there's no way the show would be what it is now if we weren't all together, if we didn't have a little bit more time and the workshop and Paris, because we needed it. This show was really ambitious and risky and artistic and beautiful, and I think we had that gift and that time and that experience together, and I'm so glad we did. I know for me, I'm so glad I did, because I feel like I understand Henri now. I connect with him more, and I wasn't ready a year ago, so it's all happening how it should have happened. Somehow it is.
For me, the fact that I now get to go to the theatre and do a performance tonight is the best thing. To do this 8 times a week, and to still every night when the curtain goes up after the show is finished and they start clapping, I'm like, oh, they like us. Yay. And it still makes me very emotional. Every night the curtain call for me is very emotional, and to see everyone standing, to see people's faces smiling, and to know that we've brought 2.5 hours of pleasure to them and just let them escape New York and come to Paris for 2.5 hours and bring them along on this journey with us. For me, that's the greatest pleasure to get on the subway now and go back to the theatre. That's the best thing.
My mother was an Alsatian Jew, and when Lindbergh ran for president on an anti-Semitic platform, she and her mother converted to Christianity for fear of what was coming for the Jews. And so to be able to tell a story about the people who did the right thing and stood up and put their lives on the line, even though the government said, no, the Jews have got to go. And it seemed to me that that was happening now, that we now know that what the NSA did was completely illegal. And the man who said they were doing the illegal thing is being prosecuted by our government and living in a hotel room in Russia. So what the story is about is still germane. People who do the right thing risk their lives, and it's very rare when it happens that people do the right thing. And this was a story about people who did the right thing and someone who survived because of what they did. And that, to me, the fact that the show, and that I as an artist was allowed to say that in the show, seemed like an absolute privilege to be able to express that and to have people hear it. Because sometimes when you say these things, people throw things at you.
Really, for me, I think it's just the overwhelming pride that I have in these guys, in Craig, in Stuart, the amount of gratitude I have for Stuart, for his belief in me from the beginning, for the support that everyone gave me at each stage of this process. When I was really so afraid that I had moments where I really didn't want to get up in the morning and go into work. As exciting as it was to be going in and having this wonderful experience, there's also the insecure artist that says, you can't do this. You have no right to be doing this. You didn't even do summer stock, for goodness sake. What are you thinking? Maybe a little community theater somewhere first, you know? But and also I think just again the pride that I feel every time Robbie and Leanne step out on stage and are up there, and they're real actors now. And Leanne was saying how now they're at a point where they can, you know, sort of make their own choices on stage and play with the material, and they do it so successfully. And they are at that point now where, you know, where we all let go and the show is performed nightly and it becomes, you know, it becomes its own creature. And as, you know, as hard as it is to have your kids go off to college, because that's kind of how it feels in a way, it feels that way, you know, you have to, I have to release it, and there's no, you know, no more controlling Mr. Director. So it's unbelievable. I think we're all kind of a little bit in shock at where we are at this point, but very, very proud of it and deeply in love with it. You know, we're deeply, deeply in love with An American in Paris.
Yeah. My final question is, we have a lot of actors in the house today, and you have these beautiful careers, all of you. What is the best bit of advice that you've been given, either personally or professionally, that you each live by? Anybody can kick in.
I think what Christopher said to me, do something that scares you every day. It works. And to be open to everything and to what anyone says to you, note-wise anyway, maybe not, you know, if someone says something nasty to you, but obviously to just be as open as possible, yeah, and to do something that scares you every day, because it makes you a bigger, better person and a better artist.
Best bit of advice that I've been given is sort of like an amalgamation of things, but I think the crux of it is stop comparing yourself to other people. You can be inspired by other people and be inspired by what they do, but you will never do what they do, and they will never do what you do. So once I started believing in myself and being true to myself, and bringing that to the stage instead of trying to fit into molds that I thought casting directors, people wanted me to fit into. That's when things started happening for me. I mean, you go at your own pace, so just whatever you can bring to something, just trust it and be true and authentic to you and nobody else.
My mentor told me they never are going to pay you enough to have a bad time. And I have found that to be true, that the best work happens when you're playing. Playing is a survival mechanism that all animals have. They learn to play so they can figure out how to function in the world, and that's what makes it possible for us to survive when bad things happen. So I found Chris to be the most fun person to play with I've ever worked with, and he is even sillier than I am.
Don't do it. Don't do it for the money.
Do it for the money.
I don't know. I guess the only thing I recall someone saying, and I still go by this, is work like 10 times harder than you think you need to. It's all so difficult. And if you really knew, but just go beyond, don't rest on. And this took me some time to really soak in, because I didn't go to a program, I didn't go to a conservatory. I was, when I was younger, people like, oh, you're terrific, parents and family, friends. So I'm like, oh, I'm okay. And I just came to New York and I didn't prepare properly. I didn't work as hard as I needed to. And I think that's why things are happening a little bit later on for me in my career. And I'm okay with that, because when it happens and things click, you're like, it's just no matter when it happens, it's really good. It feels really amazing. But if I could go back and tell college me, or mid-20s, starting out New York me, I'd say work 150%, not at what I thought was 100%. Just go, be so over-prepared, work 10 times harder, because I just kind of rested a little bit on some things, and I would go back and just, the competition is fierce. People are really talented. Don't compare yourself, like Brandon said, but just work your ass off.
Stuart?
I don't have any acting. I can't do that. I spent most of my life chasing an outcome, because I thought if I reached some magic point, my life would get better. And when we began this project, I had just finished a show that I had a lot of hopes for, that we did at the Public Theater, that didn't come together the way I wanted. In the Broadway show I had done before this, I had a big vision for what I wanted to do. And in previews out of town, the director kind of had a bit of he just fell apart, and the creative team went through a big upheaval, and we managed to save it and get it to Broadway and had a decent run. But I envisioned something really wonderful when I started, and it didn't turn out to be that same wonderful thing. And about 2.5 years ago, I started studying Buddhism and meditating, which came to me just kind of through a friend and an experience I had. And when we got to this experience, I was pretty sure it was the last thing I was going to do. And I decided, as much as I possibly could in my life, not to live for the outcome, and to live each day doing as much as I could do each day, but without saying, oh my God, if this happens, then that will happen. And by letting go of the outcome, I remember the first day of rehearsal, I asked the cast to please try, we all know we want something down the road, but I said it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So let's just try to, as much as possible, stay present, and the outcome will take care of itself. And for me as a manager, in that sense, I mean, these guys may think I'm uptight now. My God, there was a time in my life where I was trying to control everything all the time. And in this one, I think, for me anyway, I learned to not invest in the outcome, and it turned out to be the best outcome I could ever get. So that was good.
Can we borrow some money?
Christopher, for you.
I'm sitting here trying to think of like a specific piece of advice. I've had so much wonderful advice over this, through the course of this process and, through my life. But I think really it's not something that was said to me, but both my parents taught me just from watching them to do everything, whatever you do in life, to do it with love. Or to try to do it with love, because it's not always possible to really do that. But I think that's probably the best sort of advice, just in the way that they have been with me through my life. Because there's been so much greater. I'm like racking my brain to sort of pinpoint a precise piece of advice that came up during An American in Paris, and there was just so much support.
First of all, I have to thank all of you for sitting here today, specifically at this time of year, with all the awards and all the accolades your show has been receiving and everything else. Your show is a masterpiece. I know I said that when I opened this piece today, and I said there aren't enough superlatives to say what this show means. I thank you for being so honest today and being here today. Ladies and gentlemen, the company of An American in Paris.